I'm just really excited about this because when you leave here today, you're going to feel empowered, right? You're going to learn all about the vaccines and the illnesses that they target, but we're also going to learn how to take care of ourselves. And I feel like that combination together gives parents an empowerment to take control of your own family's health and wellness. So, Mary Tocco, she's amazing. Literally, after my husband and I sat in her lecture, we looked at each other and we knew what was right for our family because she gave us all the information that we needed. She's a vaccine investigator, author, producer, and international speaker. She's been researching vaccines and natural health for over 45 years. Like long before you could go online and just Google something, Mary was researching vaccines and sharing that information. She's one of the founding members of Michigan for Vaccine Choice. It used to be called Michigan Opposing Mandatory Vaccines. So Mary has been a partner for our organization since we were first incorporated in '94. She's the mother of 5 unvaccinated children and a grandmother to 13 unvaccinated children. She teaches parents how to raise healthy children outside of the medical model. And Mary, I am so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it, honey. Thank you so much. Well, I am just so honored to be back here. This is where I had boots on the dirt. This is where I began. And it's just very exciting to see such a wonderful crowd. And I know today's Saturday, there were probably 100 other things you wanted to do, but I thank you for coming out because there is nothing more important. In fact, I believe this is the most controversial topic of our century. And I have been praying for the day when our country was going to wake up to what's really going on. So thank you. And thank you. This group is amazing. You know, I was part of it for many years. I helped formed it with Sue and we did not know where this was going to go. But I believe to this day, you still have 3 exemptions available to you in the state of Michigan because of this group. So please give them an applause. Okay. My goal today is to inform, enlighten, encourage, and to help save our families, our children, and our country, and to protect our medical freedom. Because ultimately, this is a constitutional right about medical freedom. And so I share from my heart. I try never to offend. If you vaccinated your children or you vaccinated patients, I'm not here to make you feel guilty or bad or to shame you. Unfortunately, the information that I share, the doctors just don't know. It's been out there for years. If a layperson can go out there and find this information, why can't they? And just so you know, when I started this, I had to order books online. I had to go to libraries. It was so difficult for me. And again, I'm raising my children. I had home births. I was all into natural. Like I said, we never had a pediatrician. We never had a doctor. My kids never had a visit. They never had an injection. My oldest is 45 and my youngest is, I don't know, somewhere in his 30s. It's hard to keep track. My grandbabies are being raised the very same way. You know, we were really big on homeschool and private education. And really, it's all about knowing your rights. Because if you don't know your rights, you are no different than a slave. And I pray it's not too late. And you guys all know who this is, right? How about a big applause? We're on tape, so let the country know that we're all about making America healthy again. And just so you know, both of these men have my information. They have my documentation. I was with Robert about 3 or 4 years ago at a conference, and I handed him my whole DVD series, and I said, this is everything from polio to Gardasil, every documentation, chart, graph, you name it, it's in this. And interesting enough, I think I've heard him reference it. So thank God they're open to hearing, right? And Donald Trump, when he was raising little Barron, I think Barron was 3, I heard he and Melania talking about a friend of theirs whose grandson slipped into autism. And he and Barron were little buddies. And he made that comment back then, we know vaccines are causing autism. So you know what I did? I got 5 of my original DVDs called Are Vaccines Safe? And I sent one to the Trump Tower 5 weeks in a row with his name on it. I'm like, he's got to have this, right? And so I never heard from him, and that's okay, because my job is to present. And if it doesn't, whatever, I don't take it personally, okay? So anyway, I know he probably knows who I am out there. I'm not anti-medical. A couple of times we needed emergency medicine while raising my children. Thank God for emergency medicine. I definitely have a tremendous respect for surgeons and the functional medical doctors who have shifted gears and have gone from traditional medicine, who are now working at healing a lot of the problems naturally. I'm not here to ridicule those who administer these vaccines, and I definitely don't give medical advice. I'm not an MD. I've never taken any medical school education, but I'm independently researched on my own for years and years and years. No different than if I was studying Mexican cooking for 45 years. You think I'd be good at Mexican cooking? Yeah, right. So I love this. People say, Mary, you don't have a vaccinated child. Why do you do this? I'm from a family of 11. I'm number 7. And while I was having my babies, they were having their babies. And I had the pleasure of being married to a chiropractor. And while we were in school, while he was in school, we learned about the power of the natural immune system. So we made an informed decision before we had our first child. And so here I am around Thanksgiving table, talking to all my brothers and sisters having babies. And of course, you can only imagine the controversy. Like, what do you know, Mary? Who are you? What do you mean? What do you mean you're having a home birth? You're going to risk your children's life, right? What do you mean you're not vaccinating? Oh my God, they're going to die. And you're homeschooling? Oh my gosh, you are one of those. Okay. I've heard it all. But the good news is majority of them now totally understand. And a lot of their children and their grandbabies are not being vaccinated. So anyway, it was my boot camp. Believe me, it was boot camp. Because we had a few in the family that thought I was nuts. So I had to learn how to deal with that. I'm going to have a brief introduction. Then we're going to talk about the scary measles outbreaks, right? And I'm going to go over the vaccine schedule briefly. I think a lot of you already know. And then we're going to talk about a couple very, very toxic ingredients. This is critical because I think when I'm done with this, you're going to see why I'm so passionate about this message. About the human mind. There are some of you here today who might be from the medical field, and I welcome you. But just to let you know, you only know what you've been exposed to, okay? And the human mind is quite peculiar because it automatically categorizes what information you know and believe based on what you've been exposed to, what your conceptions are. And so immediately when I start presenting information contrary to that information, your mind is going to start telling you what you believe, and it's going to disregard what I have to say. Now, that's when we start. By the end, you're going to know exactly where I'm at, and you're going to probably be converted too. But in the meantime, I want you to understand, don't shut your mind off. And I pray to God there's someone from the health department here. I pray to God that we have doctors in this audience. You know, I always tell my audiences, my people that are doing this, invite all the health department people, invite the medical doctors, because they won't get this information probably anywhere else. And they have censored me all over YouTube. I used to have a YouTube page where people put my lectures up for years. You would put my name in the search engine and it'd be 3 pages full of Mary Tocco lectures. But they have completely gotten rid of my YouTube page. I can't even sign in, just to let you know that I've been censored. So it's kind of hard to find this. And the information that I share today, a lot of the graphs and charts are difficult. And my 6-part DVD series, the charts and graphs come off the CDC website. They're hard to find as well. So they're getting rid of the information. The challenge today is be objective. Put aside your current opinion and beliefs. We don't know what we don't know, and we can't find what we're not looking for, right? So just a real brief history. We started doing vaccines back in 1796. So 197 years later, they discovered immunology was based on wrong foundation. You get that? 197 years later, they went, oops, we've been wrong about this. But they actually thought back all those years, and I'm going to show you when they had this awakening, they thought that the immune system was an organ in your body that had autonomy, as though the stomach in your body has autonomy. When we eat something, it doesn't just stay in our stomach. But they knew very little about our immune system. But nonetheless, they started vaccinating. And of course, I like that little picture. I like to keep you guys awake, right? And it all started in 1980s with AIDS research. The focus shifted from a separate entity of the immune system to an interactive model. They discovered what the chiropractors already knew, that the immune system is completely integrated with the nervous system and that they both work together in a beautiful dance. You see, chiropractors have known this for 150 years. That's why when you adjust the spine, it affects the nervous system, which affects everything, right? So they just discovered this. And by the way, that was published in the Lancet Medical Journal. In 1993, they literally had to come up with a whole new field in medicine called neuroimmunology. Wow. How many of you were born around 1993? How many before 1993? Put your arms up. Okay. So all of you before that, everything you learned about immunology was based on a false presupposition. Okay. In 1995, they had to rewrite the textbooks at the universities like, oops, I think we made a mistake. Okay. So if something is based on a false presupposition, is it right or wrong? Right. Okay. And I'm going to keep you guys involved. I want you to be nice and loud when I ask you. Okay. So the big problem became when in 1962, the Vaccine Assistance Act was signed by President Kennedy to provide funds to all the states and communities to carry intensive vaccine programs, particularly for preschool children. And they were at that time, were trying to get the polio, diphtheria, whooping cough, and tetanus vaccines out. In 1986, you probably know this, our government bailed out the pharmaceutical companies because they were being sued so badly. And they did the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, which removed all financial liability. If your child dies in the hospital, or in a doctor's office while they're getting the vaccine, you can't sue anybody. If you go home and your child dies in the crib that night, they can't sue anybody. Financial liability was removed. That would be like me coming up with a skincare product. And if it caused you to have skin cancer, oh, well, I'm not liable. You see, they only protect the pharmaceutical companies. It's the only private industry in the world protected from all financial liability. And that's really what has caused this huge catastrophic explosion of vaccines. And guess what? They were told, Human Health and Services were told at that time when they signed this bill in 1986, Human Health and Service was obligated to provide safety studies every other year, guaranteeing that the vaccines that were being introduced from that point forward were safe. They were told by law, you have to provide all those studies every other year to make sure that they're safe. And again, you saw the next slide. How many studies were released in 38 years? Not one. Health and Human Services has not given one safety study. And that, my friends, is criminal. And I'm hoping Robert Kennedy Jr. will go after that at some point. So immunologists thought that a baby was completely defenseless in the womb. We hear that, right? Oh, your baby's going to come out completely defenseless. And unfortunately, they were again wrong about that. We now know that immunologists are actually talking about this. It took them many years to catch on, but they actually say that the babies begin to develop their immune system while they are 5 weeks developed in the body. 5 weeks, you guys. And this, it stimulates mass production of immune cells. And then when a woman is pregnant, her blood circulates through the placenta to deliver nourishment and protection to the developing fetus. As the blood circulates, so do the antibodies and immune system cells that travel in her blood. They never knew this. This is fairly new. And this is just Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, April 22nd, 2019. Okay? They began to understand that the baby actually starts developing their immune system as early as 4 weeks. And they talk about how the B cells and T cells can be found in the intestines about 16 weeks gestation, and about 19 weeks of gestation, they are organized into specialized lymph nodes in the intestine called Peyer's patch. So they're finally catching on. You know, they've got to be 20, 30 years behind here. And PubMed said in 2022, January 18th, the fetal immune system is highly specialized, which is to generate both tolerogenic and protective immune response to tolerate both self and maternal antigens. If they know this, then why are they doing something the day these babies are born in the hospital, which you will see is causing issues? Dr. Stephen Marini, I reference him in my book and in my DVD series. He says, in utero by the 5th week, the developing baby, the thymus is open for business and invites the stem cells to learn to become T cells. And he's referring to the Th1 arm of the immune system. He says it begins in utero, but is suppressed in the baby so that mom and baby don't fight each other. You know what this tells me? This tells me that my God, who created us, was a smart God. Right? Do you think he would develop all these animals in the wild with an immune system, and then he would create man in his image and somehow go, I forgot? Of course not. We're created in his image. The problem is people have put the doctors in place of that incredible wisdom that God put in within us. And so I go into this in much more detail in my other things. I don't have time today, but God did not make any mistakes when he created us. He gave us the ability, if we do it his way, the ability for these babies to fight their little fights when they're born. And then this is interesting. Dr. Heidi Larson is the director of Vaccine Confidence Project. There was a meeting going on in 2022. They were actually supposed to be celebrating 50 years of vaccines in the WHO, right? Little did they know that a gentleman by the name of Del Bigtree was taping them. Who knows Del Bigtree? Okay. I am so glad Del Bigtree joined this fight. For those of you who don't know, he has a podcast every week called The High Wire. It's incredible. He's covering everything. You can't even imagine the stuff he's covering. But anyway, Del was there and he caught them saying, Dr. Larson said, quote, doctors and nurses in medical school are lucky if you get a half a day of education on vaccines. And then she went on to say, safety is the biggest issue, fear of side effects. It's the number one confidence problem in safety. Then she admitted that she was very concerned because they do not have the necessary safety studies to support the vaccines, and the anti-vaccine movement was growing by 500% faster in recent years. Yay, right? You got to know that made my heart sing. I was like, yes. Okay. So it comes down to, who do you listen to? Who do you listen to? Who do you trust? And I actually tell people, don't even trust me. Get my DVD series and you'll see everything I share is documented with their research, their documents, their papers from their journals. And so I say, don't even trust me. In fact, these doctors, we think they're so smart. And unfortunately, they aren't that smart. They discovered a new organ in 2018. Did you guys know this? Yeah, it's in my book. While I was researching for this book, which was released shortly after, I came upon this. I'm like, what? You see, for years, I knew that children would go in and get 5 to 13 different vaccines in one day, right? Yet some children have brain injuries, some have pancreas injuries, some have lung injuries, some have seizure disorders, some die. And I was trying to figure out where does that medication that they're injecting, those drugs, how does it get to all the organ in the body, and how does it, affect different children? Well, they tell you in the manufacturer's inserts, do not get this in the blood system. Do not inject into veins. So I discovered that as this stuff floats around the body, our blood vessels absorb it. But in the meantime, I'm like, but how does it float around? And then I found out we have a fluid highway system in the body. It's the largest organ in the body. It's called the interstitium. Our body is about 60% water. The interstitium is structured, fluid-filled space within a tissue and is an organ in itself. It's connected to all the internal structures, such as organs, including the muscles, the circulatory system, the lungs, the liver, the colon, and the brain. Now, do you think we should know that? Do you think you might think twice about what you put on your children's skin or what you inject in them now? Because you know that it's not going to sit where you inject it. And that's the big problem. You see, things that can go wrong when you inject. The immune system can become deficient in dysfunction, defective to ineffective response. The hypersensitivity, which is an overreaction of foreign material, leading to inflammation in organs and or the brain. Autoimmunity issues is an inappropriate reaction towards self and self-recognition. And inflammation is too vigorous attack against invaders, resulting in bystander damage to normal tissue. So this is the consequences when we inject something into the body. It gets picked up in that fluid highway system. It can cause all kinds of problems. So the more accurate approach to vaccinations, and this is my summary of my intro. When you acknowledge the whole individual, which by the way, the chiropractors have been doing for years, naturopaths have been doing for years. Medical doctors look at little parts. Your ear, nose, and throat doctor, you know a lot about the ear, nose, and throat, but you don't know about the nervous system or the gut system. You see, so we have a holistic approach to the body, the human body. Acknowledges the whole individual. Whatever you're injecting or putting on that child or yourself is going to reach the whole body. When you inject a vaccine, it's not just the bacteria or the virus that the body is being exposed to. It's everything in the vaccine, including all the bioengineered man-made toxic ingredients. And so the whole body responds to everything in the vaccine. That's why some kids have allergies to peanuts. We'll talk about adjuvant 65 peanut adjuvant. We'll talk about why children have yeast and fungal issues, why they're allergic to dairy products and egg products, because all those things are being injected and they don't belong in there. Okay? Mark Twain said it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. Very true, isn't it? In fact, remember these big scary pictures of the iron lung? They staged this in an auditorium to get everyone in to do the polio vaccines. It was staged. And they're continuing to do that today. You know that. If you still listen to regular news, I think your head's in the sand. Anyway, so now the measles outbreak. This is what they want us to do, right? Everyone freak out and go get your MMR vaccine, right? So we're going to talk about that because wherever I go right now, that's the number one topic. Everyone's panicking. Everyone's afraid. Phone is ringing off the wall. If I don't vaccinate and my child gets the measles, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? So here you go. This is where you can take this back to your neighbors, your friends, and your families. Okay? So first of all, an epidemic is nothing more than an unexpected illness to break out in a region. Unexpected. It doesn't mean it's a pandemic. It doesn't mean you need to freak out. But the word epidemic is very scary to people, isn't it? They hear it and they're like, oh my gosh, there's an epidemic. Right now, this is back in March 20th, there were 300 cases. 156 of them were in Gaines County, Texas. There were 29 hospitalizations and one girl died. And they found out that it's not the same strain that is in the MMR vaccine, just so you know. And they can't tell if you got wild measles or if you got the measles strain unless they do extensive research. It's the strain they're calling it now is D8. Okay, which is naturally occurring in Europe and not usually in the United States. The little girl was one of 4. I think all of her siblings had measles, recovered completely. She was on her process of recovering from the measles. She still had a little bit of a rash on her arm when she started having respiratory issues. She went to the hospital. The hospital, of course, saw the rash and said it's measles. The parents were told that the baby was going to stay overnight and they were to go home to their family. And they told them that a nurse said, we're going to give her a breathing treatment for her lungs. And the parents thought she was going to be okay, come back in the morning. During the night, the baby was put on a ventilator. She never got the breathing treatment, and she ended up dying. And they said it was from measles. The parents are now suing. They're speaking publicly about how that hospital did not take care of their daughter, and they are suing for that little baby's death. It could have been completely avoided. Yeah. And actually, this is from Childhood Health Defense TV. We at Children's Health Defense have obtained access to the medical records of the girl in Texas who died. After analyzing the documents, it has come to the conclusion that this child unequivocally did not die of measles. His expert assessment in this death is that it resulted from a grievous medical error, not purely a breathing condition or viral illness like the media would like us to believe, not measles. These are stats from the year 2000 forward. These are the cases of measles across the country from 2000. And you can see that we've had major outbreaks across the whole country. Usually it's anywhere between 300 and 500 children. The average back in 2019, there were 1,200, 1,300 cases. But anyway, you can see right now we are not in the midst of an epidemic or a pandemic. We have several hundred outbreaks at best. These are actually a reaction to the MMR shot. Now, I don't know how many of you, I'm going to ask you to raise your hands. You might be aging yourself. How many of you have measles as a child? Okay. Did you guys ever know of anybody that died from measles? No. How many of you had chicken pox? Raise your hand. Do you know anyone? It was like you got out of school, right? You were able to stay home from school or whatever. How about mumps? Mumps. Just, a couple of my grandkids have had all of them. And they're not always fun. And, it can be a little rougher on some children than others. But the bottom line is, when you go through these illnesses from a wild exposure like that, you have lifelong immunity that will protect you for other diseases up the road, such as cervical cancer for women and other types of cancer. But so I have a Facebook page. And I don't know if they're censoring me. I think they are. But I have about 10,000 followers. I have 2 different pages based on my name. Mary Tocco and Mary E. Tocco, and people send me their pictures. This is what happened after the vaccine. I have one called Injured by Vaccines as well, and people post pictures all the time. So this is one child, and look at this. Look at these babies. This is after the measles vaccine. So the vaccine causes issue. This chart, again, I got to put my glasses back on because I have to let you know where this is from. This was in PubMed. Okay? This is in PubMed from the year 2000 to 2015. The red bars show measles vaccine death in the country. The blue bars are the number of people that died with wild measles. Take a picture, get your phone out, take a picture, because this is their study. This is how many children died that they know about, and only 1% get reported of the actual MMR vaccination death compared to those that die naturally. Okay? As of January 31, 2025, there have been 115,849 reports of measles vaccine reactions, hospitalization, injury, and death following the measles vaccinations made to the Federal Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, including 572 related deaths, 8,971 hospitalizations, and 2,207 related disabilities. Is my battery going? Hello? Okay, good. Approximately 50% of those adverse events occurred in children under 3 years old. The number of children died from wild measles over the last 20 years, I think they said 10. And what's interesting is they don't mention in the package insert for the MMR, these are all of the side effects of the MMR vaccine, and they don't mention autism and death in these side effects. And yet I have met hundreds of parents as I travel across the country that talk about how their children either died shortly after the measles vaccine or have autism. In fact, you guys know Del Bigtree and the MMR and all of that, right? He was able to pretty much show that they were wrong. So New Beginnings Chiropractic said every year about 5,700 children suffer seizures from the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. There is a 5-fold higher risk of seizures from the MMR vaccine than seizures from measles infection. In the USA, measles is generally a benign short-term viral infection. 99.99% of all measles cases experience full recovery. Again, this is from the CDC. I got this off of health.entityl.com. It's the vital statistics showing that the measles vaccine was introduced way after death from measles was happening in this country, along with all of them too. And I don't have time to go into it, but this had to do with improved sanitation, personal hygiene, clean running water, better fruit and vegetable distribution, and sanitation was the big one. And that's all on my big DVD series, but it's because of that, not because of a vaccine. And this is, again, when you get up really close to that graph, this is what they show people. So if I zoomed in on that graph, you would see there were some outbreaks that happened across the country naturally before they introduced the vaccine. So right now, the measles vaccine does not work. These are outbreaks in the country currently. Statistically, the measles vaccine does not work. And they always want to blame it on the vaccinated kids. For those of you who don't know, when I was a kid growing up, there were 4 to 5 million cases of measles every year. You remember that as a kid? It was standard process, 4 to 5 million cases, well documented, of measles as well as chickenpox and mumps. A chart here. So that chart just talked about different outbreaks that they have in highly vaccinated populations. This is a chart showing that in Texas in 1985, 99% of those who had measles outbreaks were fully vaccinated. And that was the New England Journal of Medicine. And also we know that this is a live viral vaccine. All of your live viral vaccines can shed to other people. I have a ton of documentation. I can't really present it today because of timing, but it's a fact that these things shed to other people. And this is actually a quote by Dr. Pollan from the Mayo Clinic. He was in this particular article. I'm no anti-vaxxer, but measles vaccine can't prevent outbreaks. He says here, the vaccine is simply a dud in many cases, failing to provide the protection they think they have acquired. This leads to a paradoxical situation whereby measles in highly immunized societies occurs primarily among those previously immunized. So even they know the stats on this. It does not provide protection. We had one older person who died of measles that you're going to hear about because they're going to push it on the adults as well. This person, by the way, they did the testing, his measles titers after he was dead, and said he died from measles. Okay, you cannot say that's a cause of death. Yeah, he was tested after death, and that was put out by Brian Hooker, who's he actually looked at the birth certificate and they found out that they tested him after death. Crazy. And the PCR tests cannot tell you the viral strain of anything. They can identify him, but they can't be specific about whether or not it was a vaccine strain or a wild type infection. And I know that the doctor's going to be talking after me about how to take care of your children, but I did want to put this in case someone's not here, that there's a lot you can do for home care. Cod liver oil, usually it's a vitamin A deficiency. They say that measles can deplete your vitamin A. So you can get a food-based source of vitamin A and D. You can watch the fever carefully. I encourage, if you're concerned, get one of those oxygen meters to keep on, just to have in the house. But a Dr. Bartlett, the Texas doctor who is now handling all of these cases in Texas, is found that if you nebulize with budesonide, which is helping these children who have inflammation in the lungs, because some children will get hospitalized. Some children will struggle and they might have respiratory issues. He said, this just gets rid of the problem completely. He says, if that little girl in Texas would have had budesonide, she would not have died. And so there's a lot that you can do to help children if they do have measles. So you ready for part 3, vaccine schedule? So if this is your first time seeing the vaccine schedule, raise your hand. Some of you, huh? Okay. I didn't want anyone to pass out due to shock. So we have to consider that vaccinations are the number one invention given to children before they are sick to protect and improve health, right? American children are vaccinated more than any other country in the whole world. If they work, why are our children so sick? I heard Robert Kennedy Jr. saying our children are the sickest children in the world. That's a powerful statement. When you consider third world countries don't have clean water and sufficient food, and yet our children are sicker than them. This is the schedule here. When I was growing up, we got 5 if our parents took them to us to the doctors. And then, as you know, they began to put them in the school system. In 1983, when my children would have been vaccinated, which I didn't, they would have gotten 24, but they would have started at the age of 3, 4, or 5, okay, before they went to school. And by 2025, look at that, 73 plus. They added 72 vaccines by 2017. And now because of the COVID shot that they're recommending for all your babies, okay, 6 months, 1-year-old babies getting COVID shot. And they also added the coronavac. They're adding the monkeypox. Just so you know, the monkeypox vaccine, I did a research paper on this, is the old smallpox vaccine they're bringing out that they've had on the shelves and put away for years and years and years because it was killing people. It is nothing more. You can Google this. That's how I found out. What is the monkeypox vaccine going to be? The old smallpox vaccine. Oh, they'll go in and throw in a little bit of their Franken-science in there. Maybe a little messenger RNA stuff. But it's the old smallpox vaccine. That's the base. And this is what the schedule looks like. I just copied this right off of the CDC's website. It includes COVID-19 birth to 15 months of age. This is 15 months, you guys. And these are combo cocktails. They have never studied what happens when you take MMR, DTaP, polio, throw them in a combination of 7 and inject it into the baby. They've never studied that. In fact, all of these, when they went through the original process of approval, were only approved individually. The measles, the mumps, the rubella, the chickenpox. But they found out that you were not going to put your baby in a doctor's room and let them inject them 50 times, right? So they had to figure out a way to get them all in. So they mixed them together. They just basically said, oh, let's just mix them together. Would any sound medical person mix a bunch of drugs like this together and start giving them to newborns and 2-month-old babies? I don't think so, but they do. The Laxil protects from 6 infectious diseases: diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, polio, hepatitis B, Haemophilus type B. It's a combination vaccine that is given in a series of 3 intramuscular injections. And so we knew growing up, when I was pregnant, when my mom was pregnant with 11 of us, they never did a drug because they remember what happened when they did the drug for morning sickness. What was it called? Thalidomide. They were giving women a drug for morning sickness called thalidomide, and it caused severe deformation. By the way, it took about 50 years for those thalidomide children to get settles. And they have no arms and legs. They're completely deformed. You can look them up, but they're still out there. They're in special housing for them. But anyway, so while I was pregnant, it was, don't take even a medication. Don't take an aspirin. But for years, it was common that you don't give mother a medication, especially if it contains mercury and lead. But all of a sudden, that doesn't matter anymore. In 2012, they discovered, wow, we're missing out on a lot of people here, the pregnant mommies. Historically, this is a quote from the CDC. Historically, there has been little scientific evidence regarding the safety and efficacy of new vaccines in pregnancy, as pregnant people were excluded. What changed? What changed is they realized they were losing money. And they want to reassure you that it's okay, pregnant mommies. Quote, although they are fully aware that the vaccines have not been tested for safety in pregnancy, to reassure the public that all is well and that they have checked for vaccine safety, the CDC explained that they have used the pregnancy registries put in place by the vaccine manufacturers. It's like the, fox guarding the hen house, and small studies to collect up-to-date safety data. So what this means, moms, is that you are going to get vaccinated, but you're going to report injuries to this database that no one knows about. The doctors don't tell you about. Nobody knows about. And I have met people who have had so many issues with pregnancy and medications. And of course, now this is what they want. They want 7 different vaccines during pregnancy. The COVID-19, the DTaP RSV, and the flu booster if it's a bad season. Well, every year is a bad season for flu. Ironically, when COVID was around, flu was nowhere to be seen. These recommendations come despite there are no safety studies proving this is safe for the developing child. I think this is criminal. What do you guys think? So when you inject a mommy, just so you know, it gets into that baby. Remember earlier we learned that their blood circulates through that infant and that developing baby. So whatever's in mommy's blood gets into the baby. So, and they have, Novavax is making an RSV nanoparticle vaccine already tested in 4,636 pregnant women in an international phase 3 clinical trial. And Group B streptococcus vaccine, they also have one for cytomegalovirus, which is a virus we got from the African green monkey polio vaccines. Okay? And Zika, Ebola, and herpes. They're going to want mothers to do this while they're pregnant. Dr. Marini, my immunologist specialist who I reference, says antibiotics and medications and vaccines given during pregnancy can cause long-term immune health problems. They can greatly affect the unborn child and the mother, putting the child at risk for problems with immunity. And this was after they started recommending the COVID vaccine for pregnant women. Report 48, VAERS. This came from the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. 76% of vaccine-related miscarriages from the past 30 years occurred once pregnant women started receiving the COVID-19 vaccine. I'll say that again. 76% of vaccine-related miscarriages from the past 30 years occurred once pregnant women started receiving COVID-19 vaccine. As of August 12th, the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System database listed 4,941 miscarriages post-COVID jab. For comparison, the fetal death reports for all other vaccines reported to VAERS in the last 30 years was 2,239. That is a 4,070% increase. And I'm going to just tell you, on the way on my plane here, I sat next to a lady. And you can't sit next to me without me saying, oh, do you have grandbabies? Oh, you do. And she says, oh, we're expecting our first one. A little girl's going to be born in April, 3rd. And I'm like, oh. So I just so happened to carry this with me. I'm like, well, let me tell you a little bit about who I am. And I'm like, would you like me to share? And she said, of course. I opened up my laptop. I gave her a half an hour lay lecture. I told her, Oh, literally. Gave her my card. She was taking pictures with her phone. True story. Her daughter, who's now pregnant, she carried twice during COVID. 2 miscarriages. Her daughter-in-law was pregnant twice with twins and lost twins. 6 babies in that family died after those mommies got the COVID shot. I showed her this. Her eyes were like welling up with tears. She's like, oh my gosh, I've got to tell my daughters. I go, yep. You know, it's not an easy message to deliver sometimes, guys. It's pretty sad. It's sad when I meet parents whose babies were beautiful. They have videos of them paddock caking and clapping and smiling and crawling, and they find them blue and dead the morning after vaccines. It's heartbreaking. But you know what? It's up to us now to share what we learn with others because we are saving children and families. This is Robert Kennedy's group that he started, the Defender, COVID-19 given during pregnancy. They go right here. The CDC-sponsored study that was widely used to support the claim that the shot is safe during pregnancy misreported the data. The actual miscarriage rate in that paper was 82%. 82%. The FDA wanted court approval for up to 75 years to disclose the vaccine ingredients, and we had to fight that and tell them no. But why would they want to keep the vaccine ingredients away for 75 years? Because I bet to say that a lot of us will be dead, right? And the topic will be a non-issue up the road, right? And that's just how criminal and devious they are, okay? So they also encourage pregnant women to get the DTaP vaccine. You're hearing that all over the place. If you're going to have a baby, you've got to get the DTaP. And boy, oh boy, you know, and just so you know, that is a live viral vaccine. There was a study done. And they actually did this on apes, orangutans. And they gave them all the DTaP vaccination, and then they studied them. And this was in the year 2000, 25 years ago. And they said that vaccinated adolescents and adults may serve as reservoirs for silent infection and become potential transmitters to unprotected infants. But, Grandma, remember seeing this? Grandma, you better get that DTaP or you're going to be like the big bad wolf. You know, this is how they propagandize. Even though the study in 2000 said they are reservoirs and can shed to unprotected infants. There's something called the blood-brain barrier that we all have. And children, when they're born, they assume that they're kind of protected from the blood-brain barrier. It's a bunch of high-density cells that restrict passage of substances that get into the brain. But we do know that the brain stem is not protected by the blood-brain barrier. And so if you ask me, if any of these things can get into the brain via the fluid highway system, shouldn't we err on the side of safety and not do any of this to children until their brain is fully developed? So the well baby visits at 2 months are going to contain aluminum, all kinds of stuff. I'm going to tell you how much. And basically, they still have mercury in them. Don't be fooled. They've not taken all the mercury out. They have traces of mercury, which we couldn't drink, but it's okay to inject, okay? But Dr. Marini says that they actually suppress the baby's immune system. And then, of course, now they're going to get a ton. You guys know who this is? Yeah. Okay? I've known him for years. When I first met Andy, he was still pro-vaccine. It was in 1996 at a conference in Washington. And he was up there talking about the MMR dangers. And I went up to him. I actually had the chance to meet him personally. He and his wife were swimming upstairs in the pool. And I went up for a jacuzzi. And they said, oh, we vaccinated all our children. And I said, well, I have completely unvaccinated children. And he said, oh, I still think they're safe. And I said, I was just shocked. Okay. And I've watched him over the years. We've become I used to have a radio show for 5 years. I used to interview him regularly. I've seen him at multiple conferences. But he is now much like me. He has completely come full circle, which just delights me. And Brian Hooker is the gentleman to the left that was in the movie that actually was talked about in the movie Vaxxed. He helped produce it. So anyway, we also know about the gut-brain connection. If you're a doctor and you know about the gut-brain connection in here, you ladies and gentlemen, you know about the raise your hand, gut-brain connection. You guys do, okay? A lot of the doctors still don't really recognize it, but all of a sudden, they're getting onto it. And Dr. Wakefield was completely practically massacred because he said there was a gut-brain connection and that a persistent measles infection in the gut of children with autism could be related to the regression of autism. Because he said it could be related, they took away his license. Basically, he's in the United States now. He continues to make movies. But now all of a sudden, we're starting to hear how the gut and brain are connected. It's by all of a sudden Stanford, 2024, they're finally catching on. They go on to say that the support of the hypothesis that harmful gut bacteria may escape into circulation, triggering brain inflammation and neurodegeneration. The findings highlight the gut-brain connection and provide a new tool for detecting early disease markers. The gut microbia, which refers to the microorganisms in the intestinal tract, plays a key role in human health and influences brain function, cognitive, and behavior. They're finally catching on to what gut chiropractors, naturopaths, homeopathics, and parents who've done the research have known. So now this is when it's going to get really good. Do we have any kind of salts in case someone passes out when we talk about this? We ought to have is there a doctor in the house? And in case somebody gets really, 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 really angry, do we have a counselor here who can take them and counsel them? Yeah, we should have. Anyway, you guys are going to be so smart. You're going to know more. This is my promise. You're going to know more about vaccines than your local pediatrician, perhaps in the whole state, maybe in the whole country. Adjuvants. It's a tricky word, adjuvants. They're designed to stimulate the immune system and increase the response to vaccines so that less is needed. So they don't have to give your child 500 vaccines. They can only give them, 80 or whatever. And they turbocharge the immune response. And I don't normally use this phrase, but what they do, they piss off your immune system. Okay? And I don't usually use that language, but that's the best word to describe. They make it really mad. Adjuvants are aluminum hydroxide, aluminum phosphate, thimerosal, a form of ethyl mercury, fetal tissue, baby tissue, metals, and other man-made toxins. The most common one is aluminum hydroxide, aluminum phosphate, aluminum potassium sulfate, and alum. And how many safety studies would you think they have done on infants being injected with aluminum? You see, during the hearings, when they said thimerosal was causing autism, the pharmaceutical companies thought, okay, we'll be nice guys and we'll reduce the thimerosal. So they reduced it, but they had to add something. And I was like, what are they going to put in there? It was aluminum. And how many safety studies would you think they do before throwing them into the vaccinations would be done to prove that they were safe? Look carefully, right? If you were a doctor, you'd be looking at this, right? 0. They did no safety studies to determine if this aluminum would be safe. But there was one study that I discovered, and it was called the Aspen study. And they were looking at the IV nutrition that your baby infants, if they're born premature, get in the hospital. And they thought, well, it's got aluminum in it. And I was shocked to find out that. What they did, and this was in 1994, long time ago, they took 200 premature infants. They reduced the aluminum levels in 100, and they left the aluminum levels normal in the other babies. And the result of their long-term study was anything above 20 micrograms of aluminum injected into infants is toxic and can lead to renal failure, which is kidney failure. And the children who got the full level of aluminum showed signs of neurological delay at 18 months. So they know just from 20 micrograms. And by the way, at that time, they encouraged the hospitals to begin to reduce their aluminum levels. I don't know if it ever got done. I have no clue. But a hepatitis B given the day of birth, which, by the way, you can completely avoid. You can let them know we're not doing the shot. Do not let your baby out of your sight. I've heard from parents that they said no Hep B vaccine, but then they take them off to see the pediatrician, or they go to the nursery and their bill comes home from the hospital and that baby got a Hep B vaccine. Do not let your baby out of your sight. And by the way, this is a disease for sexually transmitted diseases and drug users, right? Now, I know kids in this country are growing up quickly. I don't know too many 7 or 8-year-olds that are involved in either of these things, right? But anyway, they say it's required. I definitely encourage you to have a birth plan when you go to a hospital. Home birth, birthing centers, midwives, those are so much safer options for you, for most. But that one vaccine they give the day your baby's born 250 micrograms of aluminum. Remember, only 20 was considered safe. So your baby's not even 24 hours old. The cord was just cut off and the baby's laying there and it gets a vaccine. 250 micrograms of aluminum. Does this sound safe to you guys? Well, it gets worse. Okay. They only studied this vaccine on 147 children and tracked it for 5 days before they added it to the safety study, to the system. And again, there I am. Like, are you kidding me? That's how I feel. Okay. So day one, this is basically infants are given a vaccine that was made for prostitutes and drug users. Safety studies lasted 4 days to 7 days. MedAlert search engines, as of January 31, 2025, they said there have been 110,628 adverse events reported to the adverse events reporting system. And basically over 70% of the 1,754 deaths occurred in children under 3 years of age. And yet they don't talk about it as causing SIDS. So this is what happens. By the time your child is 18 months of age, they go to the well baby visits, which I do not call well baby visits. We never did it. They're not well baby visits. They're vaccine injection visits. Okay. You know, mom, you know, dad, if your baby's not well. And if your baby's not well, by all means, take him to a walk-in clinic, get a second opinion. But you know your baby's well or not. You don't need to have a doctor tell you who doesn't even know your child. They don't know if they're fussy when they're, need to burp. They don't know your kid. So that is a whole, basically, I think the pediatricians have been completely responsible for our children's health decline in this country. They are responsible for it because we're supposed to trust them and our kids are getting sicker. I don't think so, but they're going to go in and get between 38 and 40 vaccines by the time they're 18 months of age. This is the schedule. By 18 months, they're going to get 3 hepatitis B vaccines, 250 micrograms. Feel free to take a picture. 2 hepatitis A, 250 micrograms of aluminum. The DTaP vaccine, 625 micrograms of aluminum, 4 of those. 225 micrograms of aluminum in their Hib vaccine, and they're going to get 3 of those. And the PCV, 4 of those had 125 micrograms of aluminum. And that's not including all the bioengineered man-made Frankenstein's crap that goes in with them. That's not considering the viral load. So by 18 months, a fully vaccinated child will get 4,925 micrograms of aluminum through their well baby visit vaccines. Now the doctors will say, oh, it's okay. Their body eliminates it, right? It's not a problem. They say it's in breast milk. They say it's in formula. They say it's in food in our environment. Well, guess what? This is a humongous thick book. It's about 3 inches thick. It's an 8 by 11. And I did this for the thimerosal mercury one. I ordered the book and I wanted to see their studies. This is all the studies done on thimerosal, and I ordered it. And I looked through this whole thick book, not one mention of vaccines. So I thought, what about the aluminum? So I got this one, again, looked through it all. They have like two lines. The aluminum in vaccines is considered safe and effective and will not harm the child. They lie because they're not looking. Aluminum absorption and aluminum eating or environment is totally different. When we ingest aluminum, we only retain 0.3%. When we inject aluminum, we end up keeping 100% of it in the body. It circulates through that system. And they don't study this, okay? But it circulates throughout that whole system. God only knows where the organs and tissues and cells are absorbing it. So most doctors are not aware of the aluminum levels. They do not consider this gradual accumulation. There's a big word to remember, accumulation. You see, when a woman eats a fish with mercury from our environment, her body will chelate it out naturally. When you inject, they're guessing at what happens to it. But they never look at what this does in the body. But we're now starting to see science on that. They only studied the local effects, meaning where they inject it. Okay? So they look at the arm or the thigh and they watch it and they say, oh, it's okay. It's a little swollen. It's okay. But they don't consider how it gets circulated around the body. Because, they didn't know about the fluid highway system, right? In fact, I bet a lot of doctors still don't know about the fluid highway system. If they did, they would have to stop and consider what they're doing. Okay, so this was a study put out in 2014, systemic aluminum injury. Okay, the central nervous system impairs cognitive and motor function, impairs sensory development and system interaction. Molecular disturbs water structure and dynamics, changes zeta potential in the genome, alters DNA, RNA structures. It's linked lead to viral DNA contaminants and HPV vaccine. It blocks neural signaling, interrupts cell communication, corrupts neuron glia interactions. It interferes with synapses transmissions and ion channels. The AI binds to proteins, impairs protein function associated with abnormal TAU, alters enzyme function, etc. So they really didn't know what was going to happen in the human body. But all of a sudden in 2010, their own journal, the Journal of Autoimmunity, did some studies on the adjuvants, and they described a new syndrome called ASIA, autoimmune syndrome induced by adjuvants. See, now you know what that means. Okay? And they go on and they talk about how it accumulates in the body. Then the American Academy of Pediatrics in 2010 had a whole conference called Committee on Nutrition, looking at aluminum toxicity in infants and children. They were looking at food products and stuff like that. And this was one of their statements. Aluminum is now being implicated as interfering in a variety of cellular and metabolic processes in the nervous system and in other tissue. Aluminum in vaccines is supposed to shock the recipient's immune system defense into action. Showing up in 2011, Journal of Inorganic Biochemistry states that aluminum hydroxide injections lead to motor deficit and motor neuron degeneration. Is that good or bad? The National Institute of Health in November 27, 2015 study called a cumulative and episodic vaccine aluminum exposure in a population-based cohort of young children. I wonder why they're looking at it in young children, folks. Because, aluminum was unheard of. Alzheimer's and things like that was an old person disease. And now we know that they're saying that they have aluminum in their brain. So they identified children born between 2004 and 2011 who were on the vaccine safety data using immunization records. 2 cohorts were identified. So this was children who were up to date on all their vaccines and children who were under-vaccinated before the age of 2. And they noted that they actually noted the vaccine and the actual manufacturers in this study. And what they discovered, our results indicate that there's a causal relationship may exist between exposure from aluminum, from vaccines, and the rising prevalence of autism in the Western world. You know what they failed to look at? The unvaccinated. Yeah. So 2 days ago, I was in Berlin, Ohio, speaking to Amish people. Listen, it was amazing. I go there often. I go to Shipshewana. I go to Pennsylvania. The Amish people, in the summertime, I'm under like 10 circus-sized tents out in the middle of big farm fields with, 3,000, 4,000 Amish people in seats, okay? Anyway, I've been doing this for years. But I was at this one, there were about 200 people there, and that was 2 days ago. And most of them were older people, like I would say between the ages of 30 and 60, whatever. And I thought maybe they were vaccinating. And I said to them, I start my lecture and I'm like, do you guys have measles outbreaks? And I'm like, you don't know about, because my lecture has the epidemic. They're like, we don't have measles outbreaks. So my whole first part of my lecture was null and void because they don't have measles outbreaks. And when they have measles, it's no big deal. Then I asked them all, how many of you are here because you're concerned about, are you vaccinated or what? Not a hand went up. Nobody in this whole room was vaccinated. And I went, what am I doing here? And they said, we want to make sure we're making the right decision. And we want to make sure our children make the right decision. And I was like, this is amazing. Then I asked the big question. How many of you have a child or know of a child in your community that has autism? Not one. Not one. So I'm going to ask that question here. And I want to make sure the cameras pick it up. Okay? And we might have done this earlier, but I want to ask again. If you know of a child that has autism, raise your hand, please. Keep them up. Okay. If you know a child that has seizure disorders, keep them up. Keep them up. I promise it won't take long. You can keep your hands up. We can keep them up. We're going to show how bad our children are. Learning problems, disabilities, dyslexia, gut disorders, seizure disorders, skin rashes. In other words, look around, guys. So anyway, they know, but they aren't letting us know because Big Pharma has a hand, basically has a hand on all of it. Then there was a great study done by the Oxford Brain Bank. These are children with autism who die and their parents have donated their brain for research. And they found that the aluminum levels in these children with autism was comparable to the seniors who had Alzheimer's that died as well. So this was a brain study. And they basically found that they have pretty much the same amount of aluminum in their brain. It was consistent. So the brain is a target tissue for accumulation of aluminum. Okay? It just is. And many of the vaccine ingredients that are in vaccines open up the blood-brain barrier. Remember I told you we have a protective group of cells? They open up the blood-brain barrier, letting all this stuff get into the brain. And this was, again, the donors without neurodegenerative disease, Alzheimer's disease, and multiple sclerosis and autism. And that was published May of 2020. This is actually amazing. This, I'm trying to remember where I got this from. This is if your child does the CDC vaccine schedule, the first from birth to 7 months of age, they're going to have 70 times, the black bar is 70 times the safety level of aluminum in their vaccines. And those who are modified CDC schedule is the yellow bar, and they will have about 35 times the safety level. And then vaccine-friendly plan, which I don't know what that is. They don't describe it here. But the vaccine-friendly plan, you have about 5% more aluminum than you should. And then by the second year of life, those numbers go down greatly because most of the vaccines are given the first year of life, right? And 1986 is when they signed that, removed the liability. This chart just shows that when they did that, the increase of the vaccines, who wouldn't make a product that you can put out there and the whole world is taking it and the government's mandating it and the schools are pushing for it and your doctor's telling you if you're a good parent you need to do this without liability? Who wouldn't put a product out like that? Gee, I wish our tire companies, would you feel safe if your tire company didn't have liability? How about your food product? What if you have bad lettuce and it's causing people to get sick? What do? They recall it all. There's a penalty. Not here. No. Vaccines are the sacred calf, sacred calf, the golden calf. They defy all science. You cannot compare injecting and eating. When you eat something, the body chelates it out through the gut system. When you inject it, it gets put into the system and God only knows where it goes. I mentioned that. These are not little injections, folks. These are deep muscle injections. And so Dr. Heidi Lyson, again, that World Health Organization leader, she said the lack of science supporting the safety of vaccines, basically they say that this is a huge problem. They only study the local adverse events and do not study the systemic events. They know it. They admit it. Journal of Trace Elements in Medicine and Biology said, on the days of injection, the safe limit for a child exceeds for all three schedules. This points to acute toxicity. The CDC schedule has the largest violation at 15.9 times the recommended safety level. This occurs at 2 months. So they know. Does anyone know Brian Ardis, Dr. Brian Ardis? A couple of you do, okay? His father was killed during COVID by their treatment in the medical hospital. And he decided, he's a chiropractor, he decided he was going to look deeper into what's going on. And he looked at the medication given in the hospital, remdesivir. And he had it tested, and he found out that it contains snake venom. You've probably heard that. Snake venom, okay? And so anyway, he's basically saving lives around the world, and his book will do the same. It's called COVID-19 Lies. Now, he doesn't know me, and I don't get paid to promote him, but I've been following him. And what I found is very interesting is I'm thinking about snake venom. They've been using snake venom in a lot of things for a lot of time, long time. A lot of medications have snake venom, okay? So as I was searching around, I discovered that he started looking at glyphosate. Now, the Amish people use glyphosate, unfortunately, and I'm hoping to change that as I speak to them. but they use glyphosate and they're starting to have gut problems because glyphosate will pretty much eat up your gut. But Brian Ardis decided to look at what's in Roundup. And he literally took it to a laboratory and he did the analysis and he found out that regular glyphosate contains 7 snake venoms and Roundup Plus actually has 11 snake venoms in it. And that's what's killing the bugs in the plants and probably helping to kill us as we eat the vegetables and the products. That's why I'm so glad that Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to be looking at all of the chemicals and the colorings and stuff like that. So anyway, guess who owns glyphosate? Monsanto owns glyphosate, and they own the patent on dozens of synthetic snake venoms. And so all you have to do is follow the money. So I thought about this and I thought, gee, a couple years ago, I heard that vaccines have glyphosate. I got to check into this, right? This was just last week. So you follow the money. Monsanto owns and developed Roundup, the glyphosate. Bayer owns Monsanto, and Monsanto and Pfizer are partners in arthritic drug like Celebrex. And Celebrex increases the risk of heart attack, but that's okay. We don't care, right? And strokes and other serious cardiovascular diseases. In 2008, Pfizer settled and paid $894 million for Celebrex consumer fraud. In 2016, they had class action lawsuits for $486 million. Monsanto acquired Pfizer's research center in Chesterfield, Missouri. And guess what they're going to be producing more? Vaccines. So I went, okay, if glyphosate is snake venom and snake venom causes cancer, Bayer had to pay over $10 billion to settle many of the lawsuits, and new cases are still being filed. There's still open cases. I'm like, well, what about glyphosate and vaccines? So Stephanie Seneff, PhD senior researcher at MIT, and Anthony Samsel actually looked at this several years ago. And they say that many popular vaccines are contaminated with glyphosate used in the weed killer Roundup and basically cause a cascade of disease when injected. Glyphosate may worsen the adverse effects of vaccines, in part because it binds very efficiently to aluminum used in adjuvants in certain vaccines. Live virus vaccines that do not contain aluminum adjuvants have also been found to be contaminated with glyphosate. And that was put out by the Children's Health Defense Org. Again, just last week I found this. So he goes on to say that he was shocked at the extent of the contamination they found in the vaccines. And this was put out by Moms Across America several years ago, now I think 3 or 4. DTaP vaccine, the flu vaccine, hepatitis B vaccine, a pneumococcal vaccine all have levels of glyphosate. And the MMR2 vaccine, which is the primary one used in this country and around the world, had up to 25 times higher levels than all the other vaccines of glyphosate. To me, when I think glyphosate, I think snake venom, right? And this just shows you a graph I found again, looking at this, like there's another thing causing autism, which we know there are a lot of things that can contribute. But this showed, they actually came out with this study. This was, who did this study? I'm sorry, I looked it up and I found it online. But anyway, they show that as children are exposed to glyphosate, autism also goes up with it. So our whole environment is contributing to all of this. There are lots of crazy adjuvants. Some of them, one is the saponius tree. It's a soap-like foaming property that's in vaccines. This is National Geographic, viruses that make zombies and vaccines for us called the paculovirus. It's basically caterpillar cells, and they produce lots of protein balls. GlaxoSmithKline could isolate the proteins, stick them in a syringe, and protect millions of girls and women from deadly cancer. That has to do with the HPV vaccine. Does all of this sound crazy to you guys? They say it only needed 3 weeks to develop the vaccine using the caterpillar cells. These are the current vaccines produced in insect cells. Diabetes, hepatitis C, influenza. It's amazing. And here's the other list. Hep B, polio, rotavirus, measles, rubella, Japanese encephalitis, yellow fever, tick-borne encephalitis, hepatitis A, rabies, mumps, influenza. They're using insects to develop our vaccines now, so God only knows what's in these vaccines. Dr. Heidi Larson said, she admitted they were very concerned because they do not have necessary safety studies to support the vaccines. And again, the anti-vaccine movement is growing by 500% in recent years. We're going to talk briefly about fetal stem cells in vaccines. I got a little bit more time? Am I good? Are you guys all awake? Okay. So human fetal, this is Dr. Teresa Deeser. I've got her information on my desk. She's a global expert in the use of fetal and stem cells in vaccines. Quote, fetal human DNA incorporates into the child's DNA, causing mutation. Fetal human DNA triggers a child's immune system to attack his and her own body. That's called autoimmunity. The aborted fetal cells in vaccines, this is a list of all of the ones that contain aborted fetal cell tissues. And literally, this is from a Catholic group called Children of God for Life. And I've written articles for their magazine. And so, there are ways you can pull this up online. They're out there. Again, vaccine by injection changes the method of exposure. When babies are crawling around the floor, picking things up, putting them in their mouth, and learning about their environment, that's how they get exposed to these things. When they're out in the local grocery store or at church, they get exposed to their mouth and their nose and their lungs. That is the normal method of exposure. And when do babies ever get exposed to 15, 18 different diseases in a 2-minute period? Never, okay? So it changes the timing of the illness, the timing of exposure, the number of illnesses they're exposed to all at once. Dr. Marini said it elicits a wrong response and does nothing to enhance or help non-specific immunity. And so this is your religious right that you know that aborted fetal tissue are in the vaccines. And here in Michigan, you're very fortunate that you can use philosophical. And I doubt that many doctors will give a medical. They used to give out medical exemptions, but now all of a sudden, even a child with full-blown seizure disorders or autism can still get these vaccines. It's really kind of crazy. But this is a religious exemption. You can share this with friends and family who don't live in our state, who are under pressure to vaccinate their children. So the consequences are, when you do this to babies, these are the illnesses. And you probably know that 52% of American children are sick, on drugs, and chronically ill. Do I need to list them out? No, you see it. I think there's 15 right there. And of course, we're hoping that Make America Healthy Again is here, but we have a lot to fix. First of all, I recommend that you boycott pediatricians unless you feel it's medically necessary. Can you do that? Yes. That means you're going to have to learn how to raise your children more naturally. You're going to have to get in connection with other mommy groups and autism groups and find your naturopathic, your homeopathic, your chiropractors, your functional medical doctors. You need to go to them instead. When we stop giving them our money and stop filling up their offices, folks, something major is going to happen. We need to look at everything we bring into our home, right? We need to look at the toxic ingredients. If you have Febreze plugged in, unplug it. If you use all those sprays in your house, stop. Your children are building their brain and their body. They cannot tolerate that. We all have this little thing called our toxic can. And when our can gets overflowed, it goes to other organs in the body. And again, I cover that extensively, but your children's toxic bucket is small. They can't handle it like we can. The list goes on. I love this. It says, this is a little bit of everything. And this is why Make America Healthy Again is so important. And I'm going to read this for those of you. A little chlorine in the water is just a little bit. A little bit of heavy metals in your food. Do you know that right now there's a huge lawsuit against baby food makers? Yes, baby food makers, because they found aluminum, lead, and mercury in baby food. Just a little bit of fragrance in your perfume. A little bit of benzene in your sunscreen. A little bit of aluminum in your deodorant. A little bit of PFOAs in your nonstick pan. A little bit of phthalates in your plastic toys. A little bit of menthol in your surface cleaner. A little bit of artificial coloring in your toothpaste and in your food. A little bit of ammonia in your sugar-free sweetener. A little propylene glycol in your skincare products. A little sodium laurate sulfate in your laundry detergent. A little glyphosate in your breakfast cereals and in your vaccines. A little bit of PBA in your plastic bottle. A little bit of fluoride in your drinking water. And a little bit of parabens in your moisturizer. When does just a little bit become too much for the body to handle? Right? Isn't that amazing? To put it all into perspective, if your doctor said, today we're going to be injecting some formaldehyde, some aluminum, some MSG, aborted fetal DNA, which, by the way, I believe is causing gender confusion. There was a study done by Crivella, Italian study done. They looked at everything in the MMR vaccine and found 100% male DNA in it. Every time your child gets that vaccine, 100%. You wonder why our children are confused? A lot of the ingredients suppress hormones. When a little boy goes and gets a bunch of vaccines, his testosterone goes down dramatically. You see, that's not their fault. It's our fault. We were sleeping at the wheel, guys. The last 30 years, we were sleeping at the wheel. We weren't protecting our children. And now we know. And now we have to shout it from the mountains, okay? A little bit of, bovine, fetal bovine, monkey kidney cells, mercury, pig viruses, PC1. If your doctor said, let's get this injected, would you do it? I'm going to show you something, and I want you to take pictures, and I want you to take this with you, because this is what I do. I do this in hospitals. I do it on airplanes. I do it wherever I go. Hold on. So this apple goes with me everywhere. I mean, not on the plane, obviously. And that's colored water in there. So, but I've done this in restaurants when I've talked to people, and I'm done. Oh, your children are so cute. How old are they? Oh, I just have to let you know I'm a vaccine researcher, and here's my card. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. My number's on the card. And they go, well, oh, no, my kids are all vaccinated. I'm fine. My doctor, I trust him. Like, well, if I took an apple and I injected into it some phenol, some acetone, some mercury, some aluminum, some formaldehyde, some monkey kidney tissue, some human DNA, aborted fetal tissue, would you eat the apple? Well, of course not. I'm like, well, if you won't eat it, because if you did, your body would probably throw up, and you'd have massive diarrhea, and you'd be sick, but your body can eliminate that, Hopefully it doesn't kill you. But why would you feel it's okay to give this to your little baby when they're 2, 4, 6, 8 months, developing their brain, their bones, their lungs? You see, when you give people a dose of reality, it wakes them up. And it's like that deer in the headlight look, like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. You guys can use this illustration everywhere you go. Share it, because we have to wake up the world. Nope, I don't think you'd eat the apple. To not vaccinate takes courage. You have to have faith in God and faith in the human body. Understand the role of natural immunity. No fear of normal childhood illnesses. They're normal, they're natural. The fever, all of that, I cover that extensively in my products to teach parents how the immune system works. Trust in traditional natural methods of treatment and help when needed. Utilize medications at a last resort, surgery, and emergency only. That is my motto. A medication in the last resort. And sometimes it's necessary, guys. I'm not saying that. And, I almost cut my 2 fingers off while I was trimming my hedges, and I had to have them sewn back on last year. And this one doesn't bend anymore. I have to be careful when I talk. Seriously, I was visiting my granddaughter. My daughter took a picture, and we're on the couch, and all of a sudden my granddaughter's going like this. And I'm like, she goes, Nana, your finger. And I'm like, anyway, true story. Anyway, we have no fear of chickenpox, measles, whooping cough, mumps, flu, colds, fevers, COVID, okay? We focus on promoting health, natural solutions, spending money on what matters. The whole time we raised our children, we never had one of those plastic little cards they call health insurance. I call them sickness insurance. We had our own little fund for emergencies, and twice we had to go to the hospital for broken bones, but that was it. I raised 5 children, 7 of us, for 24 years, and not a penny spent on medical insurance. Can you imagine what I saved? You see, what you invest in is what you get. Put your money aside for real, true health care. Be a good student. Never stop learning. Never. I never stop learning. I don't know it all, folks. I learn new stuff all the day. And also get with other family members, okay? So basically you have 2 options. And this is like my conclusion. Follow the pediatrician, tells you what to do, play Russian roulette with your children, with their health and their life, or promote health daily, organic food, filtered clean water, less sugar, less artificial processed foods, less toxic chemicals in your home, holistic doctors like chiropractors, naturopathic physicians who focus on detox and natural healing, crunchy mommy groups for support, limit 5G internet exposure, and your active lifestyle. If you don't do that, by default, you will produce disease. You're guaranteed. If you do what everyone else is doing and expect a better outcome, that's the definition of insanity. You've got to do it different. You've got to get with your tribe, I call it. Find your tribe. Call them, mom, oh my God, my daughter has this going on. What do you think? I get calls all the time. But, find your tribe who can help support you. The immune system will take about 5 to 7 years to develop. And if allowed to develop naturally and allow your children to go through the normal, healthy childhood illnesses that develop it, basically your child will develop lifelong immunity. Acquired immunity develops in combat. It doesn't develop by avoiding it. You cannot fix them by injecting them. They must go through combat and develop those strong immune system fighting cells in their body. And some children, it's a little harder than others, but nothing in the human body gets strengthened by avoidance, only by overcoming challenges. And this is my ending. We have 3 major epidemics going on simultaneously. Dangerous doctors. They're dangerous. You know why? They don't want to know. I was at a conference with Del Bigtree and a medical doctor. The medical doctor gave up his practice. He basically said, I told my patients, if you want vaccines, I'll give them, but we're not going to push them. That year, they lost $1 million. He's a great doc. He has 8 kids. He's totally on board now. But they're dangerous because they refuse to learn and they refuse to see. And they call people like me crazy lunatic quacks, right? They have what I call willful blindness. The second one is political corruption. You guys know we have a system that's terribly corrupt. They are now trying to force vaccinate. They're trying to take away religious exemptions. Don't think for 1 minute they're not coming after you guys. I can imagine the fights that you have going on. They're going to come after you. And it's only going to take powers and numbers of people who stand up and say, we aren't doing this. In New York, they're trying to force them. And the third one is a medical system that is designed to keep you sick. That's all it's designed for. They don't know how to feed you. They don't know how to nurture your body. They make money off of sick people. They made no money off of me raising 5 children. Okay? That isn't going to make them happy. So anyway, and so this is this lecture here is available on PDF if you want it for references. I sell them for $30. All I need is your email. And I will send it to you in PDF. I have my whole DVD series. I don't think there's anything out there, a more thorough library of everything from polio all the way to Gardasil that is available. And it's on USB port, or you can actually download it from my website. You can get one part or all 3s. And this is my book. Okay. Natural immunity is very important that we understand it. This is what they look like on my downloads. So I love this quote. When a man is honest and he hears the truth, he either embraces the truth or he ceases to be honest. And while the world trusts the injections, my trust fully rests on God. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. So good. Appreciate it a lot.